they're trying to upgrade that position significantly. Can they pull it off is going to be the question. And I think it's probably what we focus on. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma. Back with me from the Jersey Shore is Patrick Mooney. We are your Cubs beat writers at The Athletic. Patrick, tell us about all the gym tanning and laundry you did.
There was copious amounts of that. I would say I made a wise decision. I deleted the Twitter app off my phone.
Oh, yeah.
The rest of it was pretty standard, of like bringing a book to the beach, but not reading like a single page of it. And then having a little too much to drink here and there, pretty standard stuff, but very much refreshed, ready to, we were texting the other day to cover a Cubs playoff push, ? Or maybe just like get revved up for another September collapse. Like whatever happens, we're going to be here for you. But I'm packing for Cleveland tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you get to go to Cleveland, which is their final games this month against a team with a currently winning record.
Wow.
And then I believe it's 18 straight against sub 500 teams. So this is, I think I said this in May, or was it June, whatever month that was, where they had that long stretch of like teams around 500. They have it again.
Oh yeah,
these teams
that's
are
right.
even.
Yeah, that was the Memorial Day weekend.
Right. Yeah, and they screwed it up. Right. They didn't perform. Mm-hmm. I think this is a better team right now. I think they're playing better. I think they didn't play well this weekend against the White Sox, and they still won because that's how bad the White Sox are. They got a terrible start from Jameson Taillon. It didn't matter. Seiya Suzuki probably had two of his worst games that he's had in a while. Didn't matter. He's your best offensive guy right now. Didn't matter. That they won. They're getting production from the bottom of the lineup. We'll talk about the catcher spot, but Miguel Amaya is playing well right now. That's huge. Pete Armstrong, which I've talked about, we've talked about for a couple weeks now, looks like a different player. That's huge. And Dansby Swanson's producing. You don't have to. I thought Craig Counsell said something really interesting the other day. He said the last hot streak kind of was like, it was like one guy, Ian Happ, was carrying them for like a week or 10 days. This is like a different guy every day. And I think that's really important because they have the pitching, the bullpen stabilized, and now the offense looks more complete. I said this to reporters the other day. I'm not bought in. I'm not saying they're making the playoffs. I think they're going to end up just outside, though, which is what I think you and I said. Like, I think they're good enough to make a little run here. They're going to make it interesting. They're going to keep us interested in this. I think they're going to fall short. I think they screwed up already. The mistakes were made in the past, but I think if you're the type of fan that's still watching, there should be some optimism, and you should feel good about some of the direction that this is going. Plenty of reasons to be upset. I'm not saying it like they're all your worries are gone, fans. I'm just saying it feels a little bit better right now, present and even like the near term future.
Yeah, I think some of this was what we had talked about. Like the Cubs have to take care of business, right? And like they have started to stack some series wins. You've seen the Reds and Pirates pull back a little bit, so like they don't have to chase quite as many teams. I think that's important. And we've seen the Diamondbacks and Padres sort of take off a little bit, and I think that's going to make it harder.
Yes.
But you have the Braves coming back down to earth a bit, and the Mets. Like, I don't think anyone thinks the Mets are like a great team, right? Like, you should. Yeah. So this is the scenario in which it could happen is happening. Now it's up to them to like go out. They get swept in Cleveland, and then it's kind of back to, our 2025 series. But I don't know, a game under 500. You get over that, you continue to shrink that wild card deficit, then we're going to be back on like game coverage. And that's what, I'm curious how to, like, what was the atmosphere like post Pedro Fest on the weekend?
Yeah. Counsell is the type that just isn't going to give you like, yeah, we're hot right now. He's happy that they're playing better, but it's just like stack wins. That's all he's saying. He's like, it's what I think what he was saying 2 weeks ago. There's no margin for error here. Just keep stacking wins. They're doing what they need to do. And stacking wins, making it interesting. I think he even used that phrase. He's like, let's make these last 7 weeks interesting and fun, something like that. And they can, right? Like they're good enough to do that. I didn't think this would happen, but it feels very different to me watching Isaac Paredes in the lineup rather than Christopher Morel. I was a Morel fan. I believed in the expected stats. Well, you know what? Results are better than expected stats. So he's after like 5 or 6 games of looking a little uncomfortable. He admitted to us, I don't think you were there. I think this was last week. He hit one through the wind. And he admitted to us, yeah, I was pressing. I was trying to do too much. I was trying to impress my new teammates. And that happens. That's normal. I think you'd rather a slow start and a hot final 7 weeks than, a hot start and then cools off and does nothing the rest of the way. And Counsell has hammered this to us. He doesn't think it's Paredes as much as the bottom of the lineup, like I was talking about before. And he's right. I think he's right. Like when you have 9 guys instead of 1 guy, it really changed. You don't have a black hole in the lineup. You can't do that anymore with the DH. You cannot have a black hole in the lineup. It's really hard to win games and consistently and put up a consistent offense. They've looked much better offensively. They had that one stinker on Monday against the Twins. Other than that, they look like a different team offensively. And I would say that guy that was pitching for the Twins, Festa, I talked to a bunch of different people over the past week and just said, like, first of all, like he was throwing stuff they were not expecting. It was not in the scouting report, him throwing that many changeups. And second of all, like, I didn't realize this. I completely missed it. I'm pretty good with prospects. I had no clue he's a top 100 prospect. He's a legit pitcher. I just thought it was some random dude. I saw a 6 ERA, saw the name I'd never heard about, and was like, why are the Cubs getting smoked by this dude? But then I talked to some Twins people, and they're like, no, he's legit. Like, no, they didn't get fooled by some dude, that can't pitch. He
also grew up with my first cousin in New Jersey.
Oh, for real? Okay.
I've already sent all the info to Dan Hayes. I'm waiting for. Maybe he already wrote the big feature. I haven't seen it yet. But yeah. He was like kind of a late bloomer. Like had a huge growth spurt later in childhood, later in teenage years, to where all of a sudden, he was like grew like 6 inches in a couple months, almost roughly. Okay. Like that was kind of, and then just had this athleticism and aptitude for it, and coming out of northern New Jersey, I think he had maybe one offer, like a D3 type offer, and then he kind of had this growth spurt and then wound up locally, I believe, at Seton Hall. So it's a real nice kid. That's my cousin's scouting report when I saw him this past week.
Nice. Okay, well, Patrick, I wrote for Sunday Morning about the catching situation. Listen, I don't want to gloss over what Miguel Amaya has done. He has put in the work. He's gotten better. I don't think what he can do over the next 2 months is going to, unless he turns into like this superstar and looks like a completely different player. I don't expect him to be the starting catcher next year, or be their number one option to be the starting catcher. Right, it sounds like the number one goal this winter will be upgrading the catching position. And I think they're going to try and swing for the fences and try and get a big upgrade. I also think that's really hard to do, but I've confirmed through my reporting that they tried hard for Logan O'Hoppe, who is a good catcher with the Angels, 24, I believe, about 10% above league average offensively, good defender. I hear good things about him, makeup wise. From my understanding, they didn't come close to even tempting the Angels. One non-Cubs source, non-Angels source told me, two sources outside of the Cubs org, outside of the Angels orgs, told me they didn't believe the Cubs had what it would take to get O'Hoppe, to tempt them.
Okay.
I think the Cubs disagree with that. I think the Cubs believe they have what it takes. But teams often like their prospects a lot more than maybe other teams
Right.
do. Other teams have said they appreciate the creativity that the Cubs are showing. They think they're showing a little bit more creativity than they thought they were capable of, and I think we kind of agree with how they handled the deadline. And it sounds like there's going to be competition. There are other teams interested in catching. Big shocker, right?
Right.
I think catching is really hard to find. What I do know is if they go the prospect route, there are quite a few that are like at AAA and are blocked. There's, I believe it's Drake Baldwin with the Braves, Dalton Rushing with the Dodgers, Samuel Basallo, who is, I believe, only a AA and like 19 or 20 with the Orioles.
Okay.
One guy I didn't mention, and that's because I got a lot of pushback saying that he can't catch, so I didn't mention him. I got some text today saying maybe I should have, is Harry Ford with Seattle. But those texts that I got were not from Cubs people. So my understanding is the Cubs, I don't feel so bad for not putting him on the list, I guess I should say. But Basallo is going to be really hard to get. Rushing, all three of those guys are going to be really hard to get. I know they're all blocked, but that's the reality of where prospects and how they clutch them are. But they can get creative. There are ways to do this, but it's going to be a thread the needle type thing.
No, I mean, reading your piece out of it was an awesomely detailed story that I would expect you to file like on day 1 or 2 of the GM meetings. Like it really crystallized like what the Cubs are going to be targeting here very soon. I think it's interesting, whenever you mention an Orioles prospect, there's that kind of hedge of like, but they're not the type that's going to back up the truck for really to give up any of their, most precious prospects. I thought it was interesting as well that this idea that Miguel Amaya is pretty much best case scenario, like a good backup next year, which is not like shocking, but definitely not what we thought when he made a really nice kind of debut season last year. And you're right. I think we've been, I don't know if hard on Jed, but we've been repeatedly calling them out for being not the most like creative front office. And in trading for Michael Busch and trading for Paredes, like they've definitely shown a level of creativity that I had not anticipated what had been a pretty kind of paint by numbers operation. So I certainly would not rule that out. And I think it's nice to not have that third base question hanging over you for a couple of years of like, we've said this earlier, of like trying to do a Bregman deal with Boris or, crossing your fingers on some of these young players when, next year is clearly a playoff or else type of year for this front office, as you wrote in the mailbag and addressed on our show earlier. So the catcher in Oakland, if I'm pronouncing Langoliers, am I pronouncing that right? I mean, that seems like a guy that you kind of alluded of like Oakland is that type of team that may have to move a guy like that and would want to like replenish their system. I do wonder like what the cost would be for a guy who's not like a huge difference maker, right? I think that's going to be the question. And, Carson Kelly for sure seems like a guy who would make a lot of sense and that they'll probably overpay $1 million per year and an extra year or two. But whether it's him, did Danny Jansen's name come up at all during this? Was that
I didn't hear that. I didn't, and I didn't double check his. Let me look up his stats because I don't know. I know he dropped off pretty hard there for a while, but did he bounce back? I mean, he's an average, like slightly above average catcher this year. He's doing well with Boston in 6 games. I think he would. I would put him on that list. Sure.
Okay.
I think he makes sense. He's what, 30? He'll be 30 in where's his birthday? He'll be 30 in April. So yeah, makes sense. Can you get him for a 2 or 3 year deal? Like, what type of deals do catchers that aren't stars take now? 2-year deals mostly, right? Most of them don't get like 4 or 5 year deals unless you're JT Real Muto or even Wilson. But Wilson's a bat, right? Like, Wilson got that because he's an impactful bat. And we don't need to rehash Wilson. I
just think it's like, I'm curious to see what the reaction will be to your piece and just this idea as it kind of sinks into kind of the Cubs dialogue of, is that really what they're going to hang their hat on? This idea of not being bottom 5 at any position is not exactly like makes you want to run through a brick wall or sign up for season tickets, but like there's certainly a lot of logic to it. And this has been a layered multi-year process. Like, it's still, do you then like go bigger in the rotation? Maybe not like the absolute biggest name on the market, but the interesting names just below that. I think we both agree Jed's not going to suddenly start handing out 3-year deals to no-name relievers. That's just not style. So you kind of got to go. You got to exhaust every possibility. And who knows? Like, Angels have had so much turnover. Like, isn't their GM in like the last year of his deal? Like, not saying he's about to get fired, but I mean, you never know at that place, right? And someone else could walk in and be like, why are we holding on to this guy when we can get a haul? Like, I think that's right. There's a lot of things that can shake out between now and November, and that will probably give us some more clarity as well.
Yes, I think that's absolutely a factor. What's going on with the Angels? You never know what's going on with the Angels. Yeah. It's ownership is odd there, and you just don't know if they're going to have the same front office, or if the front office is kind of being forced to shift gears. Yeah. Does Jed make it interesting enough and essentially overpay in prospect capital? I'd be surprised by that. Like, I think think about like 15 and 16. They loved having that, like, that chunk of AAA guys, right? Yeah. Like, they were able, like, once every couple months, they were able to call up an impact talent. And like, the guys that they've had on the bench or that they've had to call up to kind of make spot starts for 2 weeks, they're perfectly fine, right? But they're not great players, or they're not high-end talents. And sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you just need a quality bench player. But yeah, if Isaac Paredes gets banged up or Nico Horner gets banged up, calling upon Matt Shaw instead of Miles Mastrobuoni is going to be a big thing for them next year. Like, if any outfielder gets hurt and they can call Kevin Alcantara or Owen Casey up, if they need a bat, they just need some lefty slugging. They're like, you know what? We need a spark. Owen Casey is right there, right? He's going to be on the 40-man. Like, Alcantara and Casey will be on the 40-man unless something weird happens. The other guys won't be to start the season, but that doesn't mean they won't be by May or June or July. So yeah, I don't think it's like, I'm curious to see how aggressive Jed will be. I know he was very aggressive at the deadline, but how much is he willing to give up? Does it matter? Does it resonate with the Angels, or is there some other team that he has to go in a different direction? There are different ways they can figure this out. I think the White Sox play a factor here. They have arguably the best trade chip in baseball. So the problem, when we're going to talk about, like, we keep talking about this, but it's really hard to pry catchers away unless you have this impact talent. That's something that someone said to me. They're like, the Cubs, when the person that told me the Cubs don't have what it takes to entice them, what they said was, like, you need major league impact talent to do that. Like, are they going to trade Justin Steele for Logan O'Hoppe? No, they're not going to do that, right?
Well, yeah.
But could the White Sox trade Garrett Crochet and convince the Dodgers to include Dalton Rushing? And then if they have Dalton Rushing and Edgar Caro, do Chris Getz and Jed Hoyer start talking? Because yes, is it tough to pull off a Cubs Sox trade? Yeah, but we know it's not impossible. Also, there's, like, Chris Getz just needs good players. He needs good position players. The Cubs have a lot of good position players. They do in the minors. Like they have like 5 or 6 top 100 position players, arguably. So, you know, maybe it's not 6 anymore with PCA up, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The reality is that they have talent. I think the White Sox are kind of a wild card here, because when you have that guy in Crochet, that's how you go and get the catching prospect. But they have a catching prospect, right? So if they can't, if they get a catcher prospect, now they have 2, and then they can go fill center field or second base or whatever it may be by flipping that guy, right? It would take creativity, again, threading the needle, but I think it's going to take some of that to make this happen. Ultimately, I think if we were betting on this, I think it's what you were just talking about. It's that Danny Jansen, Carson Kelly type guy. And again, if you're not 29th, if you're 15th in catcher production, suddenly it just feels different and it looks better. I agree with you. Fans should have a star to root for. Cubs haven't shown us that they're going to do that. So like I've said, until I see it, I won't believe it. You know, like I've said it for a while. Like I think they should go get a star. Until I see it, I'm just going to write what I can report and what I know. I don't think that's the direction they'll go. They could prove me wrong. They did. I guess they half-heartedly pursued Shohei. And we didn't expect that. They didn't come away with him. So again, whatever that means.
Dark horse mystery team, Cubs on Soto. I think it'll be really fascinating too. You addressed this earlier last week as well, of how much money do they have to play with? Like, is Bellinger back? Is Neris back? Like, all of a sudden, if those guys are back out on the market, that's a lot of money kind of coming back into baseball operations. Also some needs that they'll have to fill as well. And so if I was Jed, I would try to move as many of these hard throwing reliever types or swingman types as you can. Like, I think Hunter Biggie may be awesome for a stretch with Tampa, but after seeing so many Cubs injuries, after seeing so many pitching injuries within the baseball industry as a whole, I kind of go back to Theo's thought process when he first got here of drafting hitters. There was a little more stability there, and some of that was kind of rewriting history after the fact. But I do think, like, if you're kind of hanging your hats on a lot of 12th round picks who throw super hard and have no kind of prospect pedigree to them, like, I'm not really feeling that. I would try to move some of that for some major league help. And I think, this is something that'll be a recurring theme throughout the offseason of maybe it's time for Jed to be a little more selfish, or think more in terms of now and self-preservation. I know he would never put it this way. I think he very admirably has kind of worn it when ownership cut payroll, when he let Schwarber go for nothing, which was clearly a financial decision. The Yu Darvish trade, letting those 2016 guys go. I mean, obviously Jed's a pretty convicted, decisive person, but I wouldn't be worrying so much about the 2031 Cubs, or if some guy now at Tennessee might be awesome, 6-7 years from now. It's been a long time, and the fact that we are trying to talk ourselves into whether or not we should be covering these games as playoff chase types, I don't know. It's going to be, especially if they wind up again with 83 wins just outside the playoffs. I loved your piece. I think it's a great guidepost for the offseason. I'm just very curious to see how it plays as we move forward.
Yeah, no, Yeah, fans want a superstar, and I get it. I also think like you should, if you're a Cubs fan, you should be excited that they are trying to upgrade this significantly.
And that would be significant.
Yes, yeah. They're trying to upgrade that position significantly. Can they pull it off is going to be the question, and I think it's probably what we focus on come the end of the season. Whenever it ends, that's probably what you and I will be jumping on and trying to figure out. I think it's going to be hugely important. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think like they need depth in the bullpen, they need depth in the rotation, they need depth in general, right? But catcher just feels like and seems like it's going to be the focus. And I think we'll cover it a lot more in November, probably October too, because but yeah. So we'll be back at this early in the week. Patrick, you'll be in Cleveland. The Cubs will try and, like you said, keep us writing about the games. We had 2 weeks where it was like, oh man, I guess it's big picture from here on forward. So I actually wrote about a game this weekend. We'll see if you can do that in Cleveland or if it shifts back to big picture. Cleveland isn't playing so hot right now. They do have one of the best bullpens in the game, so it's going to be tough to score off them once the starter's out because the rotation is kind of weak right now. But we'll see how the Cubs do. It's an easy schedule the rest of the way, or the rest of August. If they're going to get back into it, this is the time to become relevant and make this interesting. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to Northside Territory. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic. We appreciate all of you listening, all of you reading. It brings us so much joy. Thanks so much, and take care. Well, thanks for being back, Patrick. It's good to have you back. Take care, everyone.